Hey Geeks, Mod Tim here with tonight's episode of Star Trek Season 2, Episode 13, Trouble with Tribbles. This is it. This is the episode of Star Trek. People who don't know of Star Trek have seen this. People who don't like Star Trek have seen this. I would venture to say that this is the number one most popular episode of Star Trek. That doesn't mean it's the best episode, but I would say that it is the most well-known episode. It continues on for years. Let's see, in the animated series, they do a sequel episode, the More Trouble with Tribbles. There's a very famous Deep Space Nine episode where the cast superimposes themselves or Forrest Gumps themselves into this episode and kind of recreates the episode. But yeah, there's Tribble merchandise. I had a Tribble growing up that had different and three different settings. There was off, on, and then scared for the Klingon setting. But yeah, it is a great episode. I think the pacing is really, really well done. I think it does, like I said before, there's that balance between action and comedy, and it fairly balances it pretty well. And I think just the acting in this episode is great. So far, Kirk has always kind of been that very strong leader. He's the captain, and it makes sense. Whereas this, he does not give a fuck at all in this episode. The amount of sass in this episode from everybody is just great. And even to Spock, where he's talking about how bad Chekhov is at history and how little his joke is. That being said, this episode also kind of creates a lot of characters that come back. For one, William Campbell, who, as I said before, in the Squire of Gothos, as Trelane, that's one of my favorite episodes, and I wish we'd seen that character again, but we don't, unfortunately. But William Campbell does come back in this episode as the Klingon Koloth. And he's a great actor, and he does a great job in this role as well. And Koloth comes back in Deep Space Nine as well, along with Kang, I think, from Errand of Mercy. That's right. So that episode, it's called Blood Oath. If you guys want to check it out, it's great. There's three main Klingons from the original series, all played by the original actors. We've seen 2 out of the 3 now. So to see Koloth again, it's great. But to see where he starts from this episode, it's really great. They mention the Organian Treaty in this episode, which comes from Errand of Mercy, when our first interaction with the Klingons. Because technically, I think this is the 3rd time we've seen them. Stanley Adams, who plays Cyrano Jones, he comes back in the animated series, so he does the voice for Cyrano Jones again, which is kind of interesting, in the More Trouble with Tribbles episode. And then finally, Charlie Brill, I'm terrible with names, I'm sorry, you gotta put up with that, as Arne Darvin, the secret agent character. He comes back in the Deep Space Nine episode as well, so that 40 years later, he is still playing the same character, even though it's hundreds of years later. So that was kind of interesting to see his character come back. And I can't wait, if these videos actually continue, to talk about him coming back as well. And this is the first episode. So we all know that Klingons go through a lot of changes over the years. It started as just kind of a makeup thing. Once we got out of the original series and into the motion pictures, Gene Roddenberry had a bigger budget, and he changed the way the Klingons look to kind of fit his original vision. Now, people, being the fans that we are, had to jump on that and say, well, why did you do that? And are they always that way, or what? And because, honestly, some things just change. That's the way it is. But sometimes the fans have to have a reason for it. And it's kind of been retconned over and over again. And even today, they're still changing. In the same Deep Space Nine episode, it's called Trials and Tribulations, the crew asks Worf, why do the Klingons look weird? And he just says, we don't talk about that. And that's kind of Star Trek's way at the time of saying, stop worrying about it. But people kept jumping on it, looking for some hidden meaning. It wasn't until we got to Enterprise where that show kind of took a step back and explained a little bit of it. And then we got to the 2009 J.J. Abrams movies, where they kind of changed yet again, and now in Discovery, where they've changed yet again. But interesting enough, in Discovery, which takes place after Enterprise but before the original series, so it's in that little window, we've already seen a character who, I guess I won't spoil it, but we've seen a character who was a Klingon and has cosmetic surgery to look like a human. So it's kind of interesting how they've changed reasoning and the reasonings behind every single change. Some of them make more sense than others, but this is the first instance where we've seen one character or one species, a Klingon, do cosmetic surgery to look like a different species, a human. Especially once we get to like Voyager, it's like every other episode. I feel like Voyager, they're changing the way they look to blend in with other species, and we'll see that again in like as early as the Next Generation, where they're faking their own species to kind of blend in. So yeah, like I said, it's just a great episode. It's really funny. It's also pretty serious. For me personally, I think just the sass level of this episode, and just like every line Kirk has, it works, but you feel like he's just done. Like, even if it's just William Shatner, it's just done with the role. Like, everything's just like, shut the door. And but it's great. It really, really works. I love this episode. This kind of goes back to some of the earliest episodes I remember seeing as a kid. So all of that being said, next episode is Bread and Circuses. But for Trouble with Tribbles, what do you guys think? Like, is this episode overrated? Do you guys like this episode? Have you guys seen the Deep Space Nine sequel? Have you seen the animated sequel? Just lay it on me. What do you guys think about this? And otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow.